Hi guys, I've been promising you guys for a little while that I would show you how I created my DIY sticky grid. Now this is, or was, the sticky grid that I had in there. It's no longer sticky, and you can see it's pretty shiny because I cleaned all of the stickiness off. It had gotten filthy. So you can do this. What gave me the idea for this is I have a scan and cut, and you are able to re-stick your scan and cut mat as long as you clean all of the adhesive and such off. And I'm going to be using just some spray repositionable adhesive on this so that it's not too sticky. It's going to be basically the same. It's going to be the same stuff that I used on the stencils you saw in my video a couple weeks ago. So I decided I'm going to make this one a little bit different. This is basically, this one is the size that'll fit perfectly in my Tim Holtz stamp platform, and it is little less than 8.5 by 8.5, so it's a perfect square. But I decided that I want to do some markings on the inside for like what I've seen in some other mats and such inside, say a Misty tool or whatever, that will basically be the size that I want for my cards. So it'll help me a little bit more with positioning so I can position them further into the center. What I've been noticing on my stamp platform is that the closer to this edge that I am, this is the part that has the lid, the closer I am to that edge, the more pressure, I guess, that I need to add to the to my stamps in order to get a good impression. But if I put my card in the center and I do the stamping there, I'm hoping that I won't have as much of a problem. One other idea, and I had done this previously, and this isn't a good, the measurement isn't good, is this is just basically some Derice craft foam, and I had adhered a grid that I created myself instead of using graph paper. And because the lines are thicker, the way that it worked in the software I used, I don't think that this is exact. So what I think I'm going to go ahead and do is just make a second grid, and then I can always decide later if I want to add it to some foam, or I could just stick it on top of this one. So you can tell by the way that this pad looks that this is some very old graph paper. I've had it for many years, probably at least 20. So if you have some old stuff that you want to use, go for it. It works perfectly for what you want to do. And there's no need to waste. So this is 8.5 by 11, and I think I want to go basically in the center, except it's going to be about an 8.5. So let me go ahead first and just trim this down to an 8.5 inch square. That means cutting off about 1.5 inches off of the end. Or is that 2.5? 8.5 by 11. Yeah, it's 2.5 inches. So I'm going to cut off 2.5 inches. So now I've basically got a square, and because I want to be able to position everything in the center and have it as an A2 size card, I'm just going to fold this in half. Now since I'm going to be laminating, it really doesn't matter that I'm folding it first. This is just basically to give me a guide to the exact center of the paper. I'm going to fold it both ways. And that shows me that that center spot is right here. So what I'm going to do for this one, I think, and I'm going to go back over it with a marker after we're done, before laminating it. So from there, I want it to be, excuse me, I'm going to go ahead and start off. This is actually a really nice ruler. This one is by Fiskars, and it's got measurements 1 to 14 on one side, but then on the other side it starts at 0 and then goes out. So if you position this right in the center, you see exactly how wide you're going to go. So since this one I want to start off with is going to be 4 1/4, I'm going to go ahead and measure about 2 1/8. On each side. I think I'm off slightly. And then of course I'm going to just double check, and it does come up to 4 1/4. So that is good. And it's right in the center of this piece, because each of the boxes are 1/4 inch. So that's going to be for one of my squares. I want to also do another second square that's going to be 5 1/2. So that's going to be 2 1/2 inches out. Because those are that's the two sides of an A2 size card, and that's what I do the most with. Okay, so now I'm going to turn it. I'm going to do the same measurements here. Right on that center. So I've got 2 1/8 and 2 1/2 on each side. Okay, and next I just have to draw all those lines. And I need to make sure that I'm drawing where I can see it. So I'm going to go ahead and do this one first. So this one is this is going to be the 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So I need to draw the line to go about to the outside ones. And because there's a grid on here, that also makes it a lot easier to be able to line everything up. And then this one is going to be 4 1/4 wide, so I'm going to do the same thing but go to about the 4 1/4 mark. And the reason I'm doing this in pencil first is so that if I make any mistakes, I can go back and correct it later. I can erase that all, and then I'm going to erase anything that I mess up on before putting my marker down. So this one's for the larger side, and then this one's going to be for the shorter. And you probably can see now what my intention is on here. So there's 3 sides. Okay, and I did go a little bit off there, so this is just an old eraser. I don't even know where I picked it up from, but I can go ahead and just erase that extra right there. And next, I'm going to put another piece. Actually, I'm going to put this under because I don't want to mark up this mat. And this is real easy to clean, so I really like that. So I'm going to go ahead and just take a Sharpie and redraw those lines. I mean, you don't have to do it like this. You don't have to take it, go over it twice. But I figured that would make it more likely that I will get a good, more precise line drawn if I do it that way. And it did bleed through some, and you can see it did bleed through on the back, which means I can redraw those again before laminating, and I'll be able to use both sides. And then for the center, I'm going to just do some basic hash marks. And an X in the middle, just so that everybody knows, or at least I know, that that is the center. And I'm going back and erasing what was left of the pencil marks there. Now I'm going to turn over and basically do the exact same thing on this side. Okay, so now that that one is all done, I do want to show you a little bit more on this. Now, when I was doing, when I made this original one, I was having trouble getting the edges exactly straight. So I wound up cutting basically I wound up cutting the paper instead of leaving that little gap that you had on the side. Now, the downside of that is that when you wash this, the water does seep through that, through the edge and does dampen your paper there. So this is going to get discolored and it's going to deteriorate over time, but it's not really that big of a deal. I am going to attempt, though, when I laminate this one to get the lines exactly perfect, but I can't guarantee that I'm going to be able to do that. I'm probably going to wind up having this being slightly larger than 8.5, but that should still be fine. So next, what I'm going to do, I've already heated up my Crenova laminator, and I'm just going to go ahead and laminate this sheet. And I will leave you a link to where I get my laminating sheets from. I've got a ton. So these come in fairly big packages. I mean, this package is 100 pouches. And I bought this probably a couple of years ago and bought multiples of the same size. This one is a 5 mil. They do have 3 mil, they've got a lot of different sizes, and I found that the cost per sheet was really good. So that's why I went ahead with this one when I started making, you know, bookmarks and planner things and that sort of thing. I don't really do a lot of laminating these days, but who knows, I may do some more traveler's notebooks and that sort of thing. Oh, sorry about that. That sort of thing coming up. Now the folder itself is about 9 inches wide, so I am going to position it slightly larger, slightly this as close as I can to in the middle, so it'll have a little bit more of an edge on each side. That way I'll have a little more control over how the edge works. And before I do that, let me get this brush. I can already tell that there's something extra left in there. Oh, that's just the paper. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and brush it off to make sure that there's no dust in. I have cats, so most of my projects wind up with some cat hair, and I'd really rather not have cat hair inside the laminated sheet because I will be constantly trying to remove it and it will not come out. So I'm going to go ahead and excuse me, run that through my Crenova laminator. I really do like this laminator too. It doesn't take long to heat up. It's got a hot and cold setting, so you could use it for cold laminating, which I haven't quite figured out what that is yet. But what I think it does is it just provides pressure on the cold setting. I will do a little more research in that and see how we can use it for crafting purposes. But this works really well, I think, for doing any kind of laminating that I need done. It works well for foiling and all sorts of things. So I'll go ahead and leave a link up here to the unboxing video that I did last year when I first got it. And yes, I am still pleased with this laminator. It seems to work pretty well. And I haven't had some of the problems that I've heard other folks have had on different ones. And I don't have any problems with it like what I did with my Scotch either. It's easier to load for one thing. I don't have to worry about that back panel thing in the back, which is where you would where it would come out, breaking off like the other one did. This one works well and it tucks away perfectly. It's got a pretty small footprint in my mind, but it's also 14 friggin' inches long, so you can do some really large laminated projects if you chose to. But you guys can check that out and see if it's something that you're interested in. I will leave an affiliate link down below, so if you are interested, you can get one. And I do get a little slight kickback from Amazon if you purchase it using my link, and that helps me to keep my channel going. Okay, it's almost done. I also tend to run everything through twice just to be on the safe side. I don't think it's actually necessary, and any machinery, any kind of tools that you get, you really have to experiment and see what works well for you for that specific unit. I'm gonna go get my other paper trimmer. Be right back. Okay, so this is my swing line paper trimmer. It is larger. It is 12 by 12, so it'll handle any of my large scrapbook pages, but it'll also work well for this purpose as well. So let me go ahead. It's also very, very sharp. So I want to make sure I leave plenty of room, but I also want to make sure that this is as straight as I can get. Also needs to be under 9 inches. So first I'm going to just line up this edge with 9 inches. Let me go ahead and cut this part down a little bit as well. So that's why I've got 2 of them. I like this one for cutting my card bases so I can do multiples, and it does take up more space than this one. This one is perfect for my desk, and it helps me get some of those last custom sizes and such done. Okay, this side looks like it's probably the most straight, so I'm going to start with that one and try cutting it down just a touch. Try to get it down to about 1/4 inch around the outside. That's better. Okay, so I'd say that this one is pretty good, and that is going to work well in my stamp platform. So let me go ahead and get that out and let you see what I'm talking about. So stamp platforms, the Misty comes with their little mats. This one does not have a mat. Instead, it's got this, well, it's supposed to be clean, but that clean area there. So if I put this in here, and position my card there, that card's going to be in the center, and that's going to make it easier to stamp off the edge. I can still move my paper anywhere I want to in there, but at least that way it's basically in the center, and I'll be able to get I think better results. And we'll have to come back, you'll have to come back later and see how that works. Now next thing I need to do is I need to put the spray adhesive on there. So now we can, I'll go ahead and test these out. I have already sprayed both of these with that stencil adhesive. So now I've got 2 sticky grids. So if one starts getting too dirty, I can just work with the other one. And I've sprayed both sides. So this was my old one. That is now clean and restuck. And I'm going to go ahead and just try that out. So if I put my cardstock down, it stays. So that is what the purpose of that is. And I am going to just go ahead and just stamp out a couple of these little kitties. That looks pretty cute. Let me go ahead and take the rest of these off. And I think I'm going to use, this time for these guys, I'm going to go ahead and use some archival ink, and I'm going to go ahead and use them in London Fog, mostly because it is a lighter color and I don't have a lot of this kind. I do need some browns, I think, some light brown, because I think I'm going to go ahead and just, do a little bit of watercoloring on this guy later. So let's see how that looks. And it stays in place. So that one works fine. And then, another thing I find is neat is you can take it out, work on it elsewhere if you need to, or do multiples, and you can put it back in without a problem, and it's going to stamp in exactly the same spot. So that looks nice. Let's do the same thing, but this time I'm going to use my other new mat. And this one is the one with the grid in the center. that shows me exactly where I want to put my paper. So now I've got that all focused, and let's grab another piece of some Michael's cardstock and just make sure that it does fit. Actually, it looks like the boxes are a little bit smaller than what I wanted, but it still is going to work fine, I think. I'm going to move these guys. And so far it looks like it is sticking very well, and it's good sticking on both sides. I had a little trouble, not a lot, but a little trouble getting it to come off of off of my mat. So let's go ahead and ink them up. And the focus keeps on going out, so let me fix that. Turn off the autofocus. Okay, there we go. And then I can put another one there if I choose to. But I think it works out really well, and it's really easy to do. You saw that I now have two. Oh, that's stuck on there too. I now have two sticky grids that I can use at any point. And if I decide that I want to have a foam-backed one, I do still have that other foam-backed one that doesn't have any adhesive on it. So what I can do with this one, since it already has the foam on there, I can either spray the front, or I could just press this down onto it, and now I've got a foam-backed sticky grid. And that's going to keep my papers and such, my cardstock, all in perfect position so that I don't have as much problem with them shifting and moving when I try to get things in place. And because of the grids, I can always make sure to line up my paper exactly where I want it to go, which makes it a lot easier to reposition the paper a second time on that same grid. That finishes up this project for today. I hope that you found this video helpful, and I would love to see what you create, so come join my Facebook group, Crafting with Debbie, and show us your creations. I've left a link down in the description box below. Here are some other videos that you may be interested in. Thank you again so much for dropping by, and remember, if I can make it, you can too.